Good evening, everyone, and welcome to BT's Fly Tying Friday. Tonight, the 14th of November, 2025, we have a very special treat for you all. We have Eric Austin and Sam Matalone, and they're going to be teaching us how to photograph flies. And once they finish that, we've got to talk about folding hackle and some tools to do the job. But anyway, welcome. We're the BTs from Boise, Idaho. And let me bring our two guests in here, both dear friends from other ends. One's in Texas and the other one's in Florida. And we'll get Sam Matalone in here as well. Add spotlight. And so to our right or to the right of the screen of us is Eric Austin, and below us is Sam Matalone. And as I said, they're going to be talking about fly pattern photography. It's a clinic that they had planned to do at the show in Wisconsin, not Wisconsin, in Michigan, and we're unable to do that. And I thought, well, it's a shame that they went to all the work of getting a show ready and then we're unable to present it. So they're going to do that tonight for us. On the left now, you got Eric Austin, and you can tell it's Eric because he was smart enough to wear a shirt that shows right up, says Eric Austin right on his shirt, and of course on his screen as well. But it's our pleasure to welcome two great fly pattern photographers to Fly Tying Friday. The first, Eric Austin. He's originally from the Adirondack region in New York State, where he grew up tying and fishing Catskill style flies. He studied via email for 2 years with Irish fly tyer Alice Conba. She is a great commercial tyer from Ireland and has been featured at the Irish International Fly Fair in Ireland. Eric's work has been featured on the cover of Fly Tyer magazine 6 times. Now tonight, Sam Matalone is joining us as well. And this is the first with Sam on our Fly Tying Friday. And Sam started his love affair with all things fly fishing at 12 years of age. He tells us, I love to fish. I used to have to buy the shads, and I assume a shad is a fly, and they cost 19 cents. I carefully looked at how they were put together and decided I could tie them just as easily. My father loaned me the money to buy the equipment and supplies to start tying flies. Soon, I started supplying him with all the flies he could use and was selling to several stores. This started me on a path that has encompassed most of my life. I joined California Fly Fishermen United in Sacramento, where I met some of the most generous and talented people who took me under their wings and taught me to use a fly rod, to tie flies better, to understand the needs for conservation, and to enjoy nature. Fly fishing and tying has been part of his life for over 60 years, and today he gets very excited about all aspects of the sport. Sam firmly believes the wisdom of one should be the knowledge of all. Let me say that again. The wisdom of one should be the knowledge of all. Well stated, my friend. He enjoys freely sharing his limited knowledge with others, and when I say limited knowledge, somewhat tongue-in-cheek. As all of you will see tonight, his limited knowledge is a gross understatement of actual skills. In his spare time, he is on the board of directors for FFI. He's one of the governors for the Fly Tying Group and is on the board of directors for Fly Fishing International's Washington State Council. Join us in welcoming both Eric and Sam to Fly Tying Friday.
All right. I want to first of all, I want to thank Gretchen and Al for having us. I had some emergency surgery before our Sam and I were supposed to present at the Grand Rapids, Michigan show this year, and couldn't make it. And so we're gonna do what we more or less what we had planned then. It would have been a little more hands-on then, I think, but this should work fine. And I want to start with a couple of caveats. One is what I'm going to talk about tonight. I'm going to talk about DSLRs only. Obviously, there are other cameras you can use to take fly photos. And I'm only going to talk about taking photographs of a static subject. All right. The settings I prefer to use myself work well for a static subject like a fly. And so everything that I'm talking about refers to taking photos of flies. And they might be photos for, step-by-steps for Fly Tire magazine. They might be step-by-steps for the FFI site. Fly of the Month leaps to mind because I'm in charge of it now. But anyway, uh, oh, by the way, I do have my name on my shirt, and that's always a good thing because at this age, then I always know who I am. So I'm going to start with DSLRs, and the advantage to a DSLR is a DSLR is really great for print for various reasons, and they've been used for years for print, going back to the newspaper days with SLRs. And it stands for Digital Single Lens Reflex Camera. To be honest, they're not particularly good for a lot of video stuff, but can be used for that. And I use mine. Mine does double duty. A couple of things that are very important about taking pictures of flies with the DSLR, in my mind, and these are my opinions, and Sam agrees with at least one of these. We both like to have the shot of the fly come right out of the camera as we're going to display it later, or come as close as we can. I don't like to do a lot of work in Photoshop after the fact or Lightroom, either one, other than maybe cropping some basic stuff. And believe me, I've tried some things with Photoshop over time, and I'm never satisfied with the result, almost never. So the closer you can come right out of camera to what you want to see, the better. Now, I'm going to talk about, I've got one other reason to take fly photos. Two other reasons, actually. One is over time, in my own case, I've tied some flies that I really like, and they get gone. They get sold at shows. They get given to friends. They get framed and put into auctions for various charities. Things happen, and these flies disappear. And it's pretty heartbreaking over time but in my case, I've taken photos of all these flies, so at least I have the photos. So that's a benefit. Another benefit, I've been able to improve my tying a great deal over time by taking photos of the flies, blowing them up big and really having a good look at everything that's wrong with that fly. Now I'm gonna talk about actual settings that I like to use and why I like to use them in my DSLR camera. There's something called the exposure triangle, and the exposure triangle are three settings that affect how light or how dark your photo is going to be when all's said and done. And I like to automate this process quite a bit. And the three settings are ISO, f-stop, and exposure time. All three of these will allow you to control how bright or dark your photo is. There's a small problem with ISO in my mind. What ISO is it was an attempt when they invented the digital versions of the old SLR cameras, which used film. That film had different ratings. It had ISO 100, ISO 200, ISO 400, ISO 800. And the higher you went, the more sensitive that film was to light. So if you were shooting outdoors, you might want to use ISO 100 film. If you were shooting indoors and didn't have good lighting, you might want to go up to ISO 800 film. They carried that over for when they created DSLRs, they carried the ISO idea over. However, you can't make a sensor in a DSLR more or less sensitive. You just can't do it. It's static. It's X amount of sensitive, period. So what they did is they put a little light amplifier in these cameras. And just like audio amplifiers, if you turn ISO up too much with a given camera, you can get a form of distortion. In cameras, it's grain on your it makes your photograph look grainy. You can get weird artifacts. So I like, in a perfect world, I want to shoot with as little amplification as I can. And I will set my ISO as low as I can go because I have great lighting. And great lighting is in my mind, the single most important thing. The better you can light your fly, the more evenly, the better you can light your background, the more evenly you can do it, the better the photos are going to turn out. And you can use a very low ISO setting, in other words, not very much light amplification, and take some great photographs. Another thing that's important for shooting is a tripod. And I will show you here. I did a little test using my excellent lighting and setting my camera to ISO 100 and setting my f-stop the way I always do, and I'll get into f-stop in a minute. I took this picture handheld with no tripod, and I kept as steady as I could take it. I had my elbows locked. This was the least blurry of several photographs I took. I then set the ISO to auto and got this. Auto ISO sounds like a great panacea, but it's not. You're still better off using a tripod, which keeps the camera very steady, no camera shake whatsoever. Basically, you should only shoot handheld in a live situation, like if you're taking pictures of flies at a show or something. You you know, and you can set for auto ISO and get away with hand holding the camera. The next setting of the three of the exposure triangle is the one I like to control myself. It's the f-stop. And that is basically the aperture size of the camera is the way to think of that. An aperture size this big would be a very low f-stop. If the aperture was this big, that's a very high f-stop setting. Now, why would you ever want to set an f-stop high? If you set your f-stop high, you get a greater depth of field. You'll have more of your photograph in focus. Ansel Adams, the great nature photographer, first of all, he's one of the great photographers in history, probably the most famous. He had a club called the F64 Club. Cameras only go up to F64 typically. That's a tiny pinhole that he's shooting through. In order to keep his camera steady, he would haul his tripod up mountains with him. and then take these very long exposure time photos with this teeny tiny f-stop. Obviously, if you've just got a little pinhole that you're shooting through, you need a longer exposure time for the camera to be able to process what you're doing. I like to set my ISO. Well, Sam's got some great ideas about ISO, and for years I've just set it low, too low, as it turns out, for my particular lens. And Sam will get into that. He's done some work with manufacturers about a good setting for your lens. But a nice middle ground is, f16, f22, somewhere in there. And that way you'll get, especially if you have a fly that has a lot of depth, or it's a shot like this. You notice that this shot here, and of course I shot this at f8 because for years I just shot at f8 all the time. I'm embarrassed to say. But anyway, if you look at the CDC wing on the lower wing, it's very much in focus. And that was the point. I wanted to show the two thread wraps. But you notice as you get to the point of the hook or the vise, it's very much out of focus. And that's because I didn't use a high enough f-stop. All right. So what about exposure then? Setting your exposure time. Well, I don't do that. I let the camera do it. I shoot in something called aperture mode. And what aperture mode means, when you set your camera to aperture mode, your DSLR to aperture mode, it means that you are going to set the aperture. You're going to control that. You're going to control the f-stop. And the camera is automatically going to provide you with the correct exposure time for that. There's a light meter inside the camera that will help with that. So that's the exposure triangle. Two out of the three I don't worry about at all because I set my camera up in aperture mode. There are other modes you can set your camera up in, including manual, where you control everything yourself manually. You can set it, each and every setting yourself. I've kind of automated the thing, and that's how I typically shoot. Let's see how we're doing. All right. The next thing I want to talk about a little bit is aspect ratio. You'll hear talk about the aspect ratio of a photo. Here is a fly I shot with an aspect ratio that came right out of my DSLR camera. This photo came right out of camera. It might have been cropped a little bit, I don't know, but that would have been the extent of it. This is a 3:2 ratio. That's width to height. This is 3:2 aspect ratio. Most DSLRs, this is native, or many of them are native. This is a 4:3 aspect ratio. This is what you get out of an iPhone typically. Also, a lot of cameras will also do 4:3. They might even do it natively because I don't know everything about every camera. I just know about my Nikon. To be honest, that's about it. That's a 4:3. And you notice it's a little more square than this one. This is rectangular. This is a little more square. You can see the difference there. And then this is a 16:9 aspect ratio. This is typically used with videos. For instance, if you do, that's because videos have a 16:9 aspect ratio. High def videos do. If you want to do a thumbnail for YouTube, you want to put up a YouTube video you've shot, you'll want a nice thumbnail, and it needs to be a 16:9 aspect ratio. In fact, it needs to be 1280 by 720 pixels, which is 16 by 9 aspect ratio if you reduce that down. You need to be able to easily, and you can do this in Photoshop, it's a good idea to be able to go from one aspect ratio and change it to another if you want. For instance, the photographs I'm showing on OBS here tonight are typically 16 by 9, and that's because that is this is a video that we're doing. Let's talk for a second about lenses. I'm going to quickly show my setup here. I'm going to get off track a little bit. This is my setup this is right now, it's set up for taking photographs of flies, but it does double duty. The mat that's on the monitor, that's clipped to the monitor, that's my backdrop for taking pictures of flies. If I want to do a zoom video, the one on the desk, in that case, the camera will be over my shoulder, and it'll be looking at the fly over my shoulder. So that blue background on the desk is what I use for live videos, Zoom demos, etc. So this whole computer arrangement here allows me to do both reasonably easily. Because of that, my macro lens is a 100mm lens. I like it because it's got the reach I need to use this both ways. If I had a 40mm lens, which Nikon makes one, a macro lens, I would have to, if I was doing a live video, I'd have to put this camera between me and the fly at that point to get close enough. Whereas with 100mm, I've got better reach. So I like the 100mm size. I think Sam has a Nikon 100mm lens, and I have what is this? A Tokina. The macro lens is much more important than the camera itself, in my opinion. And if you're going to spend money, spend it on the lens. The next thing I want to talk about is framing photographs. Let me get past this. I don't like to do a lot of cropping if I can help it. And this is a fly that was part of a series of step-by-steps that went in Fly Tire magazine. And on this photo, it looks like I've cropped it, but I haven't. I moved the camera close so that I could get this shot. I don't like a lot of cropping. I like to keep photos, if it's step-by-steps, I want them to be all the same aspect ratio. And so does Fly Tire magazine, and so does FFI, and so do book publishers, etc. There's something called resolution that is very important to a lot of publishers, and Sam will get into DPI. I'm going to leave that for him, but if you do too much cropping, you will lose resolution. And you don't want to do that if you're taking your photographs for print. If it's for online, that's fine, because that's a low definition. It's, even high definition video is very low definition compared to excellent DSLR photography. Talk about one more thing, and I'll show you my light setup real quickly. Just quickly talking about white balance. White balance is another thing I don't worry about. I have sunlight bulbs, special sunlight bulbs. And you'll need to look at the documentation, but they are the two out of the three sets I have are made by Prometheus Lights. Prometheus Lights. This is that I'm set up to photograph this fly. And here's the result. Now, look at something. Look at the background. All right. And now look at this background. This background is darker. And that is because of something called um, the inverse square law. And what the inverse square law tells us is that light falls off at a tremendous rate. If this was a white background here, this background then would be gray because it just would darken it. The light has fallen off so much. Our brains don't have any problem with this. A camera is not smart. So, um, one way you can, if you want the back, if it were me, I'd leave this as is. But if you want the background to show up as is, you can give it its own remote light. Here's the resulting picture with the speed light. Now it's like a remote flash, and it's activated from the camera itself and gives a background that's much closer to reality in this case. You have to be very careful with this sort of setup. This is one that was shot on a white background, and I had a lot of problems with the light reflecting back, and eventually put up a paper towel instead of the white background I had on there, which was a silicone pad. I used a paper towel in order to get this shot. And this is my last photograph. And Sam Matalone sent me one of the first DSLRs ever made, a Nikon D1X. And it's only 5.6 megapixels, and yet it can take this picture. Highly detailed, terrific shot. I'm very happy with it. And I've had a ball with the camera. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sam. Sam, it's all yours. And thank you for
Okay.
the camera.
Oh, no problem, Eric. Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to apologize ahead of time because when I get talking about photography and teaching people, I tend to get very excited. Eric will tell you I can get excited. So will Aaron Cully. He can tell you that. But a couple things that Eric mentioned that I'd like to touch on real briefly before I get into my presentation. Absolutely. If you start taking pictures of your flies, you will become a better fly tyer. No ifs, buts, and ands about it. You put it up there and you see it and you go, how did I miss that? My God, that looks ugly. So you will become a better fly tyer. The other thing I need to mention is the sensors that they use on the camera, 35 millimeter DSLR, is the same sensors they use on your phone. The only difference is the size of the sensor. So inherently, they have the same capability. People don't realize that. They always think it's cheaper, but no, it's the same sensor. Your phone can produce great pictures, as good as a picture as a DSLR for social media. Because in social media, all you need is 72 DPI. And we'll talk about that in a little later. Now, I'm struggling with the print version. I know I can get a good 16 by 20 inch print at 300 DPI off the phone. And it takes a little work, but I still believe at this point in time that if you want anything bigger than, say, a 8 by 10 print from a cell phone, the best you can do for a cell phone is an 8 by 10 print at 300 DPI. If you want bigger than that, you're going to really need to use a DSLR. But I'm very optimistic that there will be software out in the future that'll be able to do it. Now, Eric talked a lot about f-stops, shutter speed, ISO. Well, using a cell phone, you don't have to worry about that. A cell phone, the cell phones are smart, and we'll talk about that in a minute. They are very smart. But the real critical factor when using a cell phone to take a picture of a fly is the amount of light that you have. The more light you have, the internal software of the camera can do much, much more things. It can shift the focus so that you can get a larger depth of field or have an apparent larger aperture. It could freeze the frame quicker. There is just so much it can do with the software as long as you have enough light. So this program that Eric and I are doing was actually part of, Al mentioned was part of Fly Fest that we had in Grand Rapids. And this was really set to be about a 3 to 4 hour program, with the first part lecturing, and then the second part of it was going to be hands-on, where we would have a DSLR station set up where people can use a high-quality DSLR camera. We were going to have places where people could take their cell phones and use the different lighting systems to take a picture and show that you could do it. So what I've done is I've cut this down just on the critical parts. I'm not going to tell you how to set your phone up. I'm going to tell you what components are. Now, everything that I've done is for an iPhone 16. And in the chat, on the very first, at the very top, there should be 2 links. One of them is to Eric's complete presentation, as well as, and the other one is for my complete presentation, as if we were doing it in Grand Rapids. It shows all the detail, talks about all the steps, goes more in details, and give you some examples. Here are the links that I will put at the end of the thing. I've made them so that they're both downloadable as PDF files. And you can tell which one of us spends a little bit more time doing magazine work. I'm not pointing fingers, Eric. But anyway, this plays. Okay, let's begin. Now, there's a lot of verbiage here, and I'm only going to talk about some aspects of it, because most of the information here is in the links that I have, and I just want to hit a couple points. The beauty about a phone is once you take a picture, basically it does everything for you. It makes all the decisions that you would have had to make with the DSLR. You are completely free of those decisions. You can change some settings around to make it appear that you're doing something, but really the phone is doing it. While your phone makes most of the decision for you, the settings can influence how your pictures look. Now, on social media, there are two pictures up here. One is taken with my Nikon Z7 with a Nikon lens, a speed light, and it's optimized for taking pictures. The other one is taking a picture with my cell phone, where I took my took my camera out, put my LED lights, turned on some lights, and took a picture. Which one of it, just think in your mind, which one of them you think was taken with the camera and which one with the cell phone? The one on the right was taken with the cell phone. And you can see a little bit more detail in here, but if I would have put more light on it, we would have pulled it out here. But for social media, this thing will work great. There's a bigger view of it. And you can see the little bit more detail in here versus here. But this is easily correctable. And the color contrast actually came out better right off the camera than it did the phone. Again, these are pictures that I clicked the shutter, no cropping, no nothing, just as it came off the camera. As Eric mentioned, I'm a big fan of trying to do as little as possible except for cropping. That is probably a 2/0 hook. This is a size 24. And one was taken with the digital camera, my DSLR, the other with the phone. Now, when I took these pictures, I was actually surprised. The one on the right is actually with the cell phone, and there was a slight color shift, and there's more detail on the one in here. So thinking about it, I'd have to say, get down to a size 24, you might find some difference. But at the end, I'll touch back on that subject. Now, here is my setup. Here's my phone. You can see the flag just sitting right at the back of it. But there's my phone. I have it on a tripod set there. And I have these two little light panels that I use. These are LED light panels that have a variable output. Now, these panels were only up to about 60%. I could have gotten much more light on it, but I didn't need to. And it looked good on the image when I opened the viewfinder, and this is it. So any phone you can put any phone here and we can get a great picture with it. Now, these little light panels I have seen these things sell for anywhere from $29 to $300. These cost me 49 bucks. So they come with a diffuser, and these are some old stands I had. But anyway, the setup is extremely simple. And you'll notice that I'm taking it in a vertical position. And the reason doing that is if you take it with the fly down flat and you're above it, you tend to get a lot more shadows and interference. So I prefer going this way, and it's very simple setup. Grab my phone, put it in a holder, turn on the lights, go over, click, and it's done. All the pictures that you will see have been taken with my cell phone. This is a picture of one of Harry Lemure's flies that I took. Now notice the detail. I have a background on it. It's great. The camera captures light through the lens. This is exactly how a digital lens refurb. It's no different than your phone on your phone, except the phone is doing 90% of the work. The phone uses what they call computational photography. It's an algorithm that each phone has, and each phone has a different algorithm based on the company. I don't know what that code looks like, nor would I think Apple or Samsung would ever give it out for anyone to see what they're doing. But they've designed the cameras with this concept of using computational photography, is that once you get enough light in there, it will compensate for ISO. These cameras are fixed lenses. They don't have apertures. They have it's basically a 2.0 aperture, and they'll adjust the shutter speed. And they do that all by this computational software. If it has enough light, it can capture the image, take a shot of it, shift the registers or the focus a little bit down, take another picture, and keep making a series of pictures, then stacks them all together So it looks like you have tremendous depth of field, when in fact you only had one picture and it just took it at different spots. So these cameras can do it. Now, as I stated, I'm not going to go through the setups. I will talk about some of the key setups in my mind and what I believe are correct. But all these cameras, all these cell phones have the same setup, the same thing. They may call it a little different. So in the handout, I've gone through step by step how you set this up. So I'm pretty sure you could take a Samsung camera or Google camera and go through it and follow the settings and get you very, very close. The phone is doing the heavy work. The settings that I will talk about in the future to set up, all you have to do is leave them there, because they will work when you take a normal picture of, say, your kids or your grandkids or a scenic shot outside. Once you set them up, save them, and just take it and let the camera do its work. It will work all the time. Now, the big factor that cell phones have is they readily adapt to all social media. If you look at the sensors on the cameras on the cell phone, they inherently have a 72 DPI. So if you shrink it, make it a smaller size print and put it up on the web, it'll come out perfect every time, because the web, social media, doesn't need anything more than 72 DPI. However, if you don't feel comfortable with that, you want to have easy math, put it at 100 DPI and go from there. Let's talk about a couple things. First of all, photo mode. Make sure that your camera is in photo mode. Some of them have live mode where they'll take a series of pictures and then you pick out the best one. Some of them have enhanced digital zooming, etc., etc. They have, all you need to do is set your phone to a basic photo mode. These phones, all of them, are fixed aperture, and they only have, it's only about f2. Some are f2.4, some are 1.8, but basically they're all f2 and they're fixed aperture. You need to be in macro mode. If macro mode is enabled and your subject goes away, the camera's smart enough to jump out of macro mode so that you can take a picture of a scenery. But if you get close to it, it'll automatically jump into your macro mode setting. So you can get, with the right setup and enough light, you can get about 2 centimeters, 3/4 of an inch away from a subject. Now, the problem you come to is your lenses, your camera's offset somewhere, and you got to figure out where that is to get everything aligned. But photo mode, it needs to be in there. You need to have your macro mode on. Autofocus, that's a must. When you get this close, taking pictures of flies, it's extremely difficult to take a picture without autofocus on. Eric showed you where he was hand holding it. Well, just imagine on a camera how difficult it is. You can go into, once you're in photo mode, you can, if you want to, use the portrait mode to change the depth of field. And in portrait mode, what it does is it blurs the background out a little. I just usually keep depth of field on sharp, and I like the sharp background. Live video is nothing more than capturing a short video clip. I don't recommend this. There's several of them. The problem is you get 4 or 5 images, then you go look at them, get the pictures, but you don't have the resolution that you normally would. High dynamic range, it means it's capturing a series of pictures at multiple exposures. And the idea is that your picture will be more balanced. Again, those modes add very little to shooting macro, but it's on your camera. This may be a little overwhelming. Setting up your phone to correctly take macro photography doesn't mean you have to change your settings when you want to take normal pictures. Just use the phone with the same settings and everything will be all right. In the link that I have, it'll show you step by step how to set it up with iPhone 16. But it's basically the same with all phones out there. There's some differences, nomenclature, but the basic idea will be the same. This is a fly that I tied, and I was getting excited because I was going on a trip to the Clearwater to go do some steelhead fishing. I tied it up, and to be honest, I was pretty happy with it. But then when I took the picture over here, I did a terrible job on that body. I mean, the tinsel isn't as smooth as it should be and everything. So you start taking pictures of flies, you're gonna get better. These are some random pictures that I took for the article, and they're all taken on my cell phone. I didn't crop any of these. These are off the camera as I took the picture and brought it here. Look at the detail on on this one right here. I was rather shocked. This is a size 24 also. You can see the dimple in here. You can see these are 1/32 measurements on the back side. So 1, 2, maybe 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, maybe 8 32nds, the whole fly. Then more here. So this is what your phone is capable of doing without much work. These are some tips for better photography. These are what I believe important. Good lighting is impairment for close-up work with cameras. Direct lens light can be your friend, but if not controlled, it can create shadows. Camera lights are great. The panels I have are very good. I use 2 of them. That way I could adjust the light and control it because I could see exactly how that picture's gonna be before I even trip the shutter. I can move the lights and change it around. The next one, this is probably the most difficult one, is keep it steady. Eric talked about putting on a tripod. If you'll notice, I had a little tripod on the camera that I used to take that very first picture. Now, the way I did that is I used the delay function for the shutter. I hit it to 10 seconds. So once I hit it, everything could slow down. If there are remote controls that Bluetooth compatible remote controls you can get for your camera, I've bought 3 of them and I've lost 3 of them. So I'm using the delay button on the camera. Avoid digital zoom. As Eric said, the minute you start pulling that, you're losing data. And I'll state this, if you want to make adjustments later with software, you won't have as much data. So basically avoid the digital zoom. Goes without saying, you need to keep your lens clean. Wipe it off with a good lens tissue beforehand and you'll be okay. I prefer to try to get a picture off of my DSLR or my cell phone without doing any edits. However, when I see all the photos that are put up on the internet and on the different forum, let me clue you, 90% of them have been edited through some sort of software. I can tell, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just it's just your choice. So there's nothing wrong with editing your pictures via some software. One of the most confusing parts working with pictures on a phone are what is good enough for social media, versus a high quality print. DPI is a term, dots per inch, which were used for printed images, indicating how individual dots or toner printers can place the dots within a 1-inch space. The higher DPI, the sharper your image. A low DPI, the worse it gets. Okay. In digital photography on phones, it's called PPI, pixels per inch. Very similar to DPI, except they were referring to the image displayed on a monitor or screen. For most of our conversations here, most people will use PPI and DPI interchangeable, and we will here. All you have to do, you don't need anything better than 72 DPI to put something up on social media. If you want something for print, you really need, the minimum requirement is 300 DPI. The higher the DPI for a digital image will create a larger file, but will not improve the image on the screen. So if I put a 600 DPI image onto social media, it's going to be a very large file. It's going to load slower, and it's not going to be any better than a 72 DPI image on the screen. So in the article, the link that I have, it goes much more into detail about DPI and stuff like that. Okay, let's see if I can do this right. Okay, remember that size 24 fly that I took? I wasn't too happy with it, and I went back. I cranked up the light to a maximum, to as much as the light I can get out of my LEDs. I took this picture, and again, you could see I brought the light up so much I sort of burned out some detail here, but what I wanted to know is, could I get the detail up here? And I got the detail. So it's a matter of working with your camera and getting a feel for it and knowing how your lights interact. This is for air. This is a fly by a fly tire that I think is fantastic. Tires, Aaron Cully. He sent this today, and I sort of asked him if I could use it. I didn't tell him what I was going to use it for. But this is a fly that Aaron took with the Samsung 20 today. And let me clue you, I think he did a doggone good job. Now, Eric, the only thing I would say is it might have been, Aaron, the only thing I would say is might have been had a little too much light here. This washed out a little, but that's a great picture and a great fly.
Yeah, I wanted to add my 2 cents. Sam has hammered on how important lighting is, and you can overdo lighting and get blown out parts, and that can't be fixed in Photoshop. Once it's blown out, it's blown out. So you have to be very careful and really look at what you're doing with the lights. But I have my own example of what can happen if you don't know or do anything about your lighting. And this is a fly from years and years ago. And I can tell you exactly what's wrong with this picture. I mean, the fly's not the best to begin with, but the picture is horrible. And it's because I tried to use my tying light. And that's how important lighting is. This is what results if you try to use just one little light and try to light the whole fly with it. So that's all I got. And Sam, I thought that was great. Really demonstrated the efficacy of the iPhone or cell phones in general.
Yeah,
These
I
days.
see that I have a couple questions here. First one, the light panels should work great for video too. What company and who the product? The company I buy the light panels from is called Lume, Lume, and I would never buy anything from them unless it was on sale. They have great sales. I mean, I've seen them where they knock the price of the panels down by 50%. You just have to wait them out.
And the weekly tip this week. Last week, we talked about folding hackle with a bread clip. And that was information that came from Lou Duncan in Sisters, Oregon. And he was passing that along as information that he had gotten from a guy by the name of Ron Eagle Elk, a fly tire who at one time lived in the West Coast area. I knew Ron real well. He was a good friend. And anyway, I thought this was very, very interesting. So I've done some experimenting this week. And before I move into that experimenting, though, I want to show you something that Sam Matalone sent me. He sent me a whole thing on doing hackle. And he uses not a bread clip, but he uses a divider from his fly box. You see that picture at the bottom? That is and I'm going to be doing some of that too. And what he did is he cut some slots in it. Well, I thought, well, that's pretty doggone cool. So I have some interesting results to share with all of you. So let's get into the weekly tip is about hackle folding tools. I'm going to show you a couple of things that didn't work and then some things that do. But we're right back here. And what I'd like to do now is to go into the materials area and look at some stuff that I've got here. Let's just push this aside. Everything from here over to the right of the screen is disasters. I have some things that you don't want to do. I'm going to start with this one right here. Let's move to the vice camera, Gretchen. And I'll take my focus fly out of the vise and just set it aside. Now this is what's left of a bread clip and a tool that I made, because I said, well, Jesus, you know me, if a bread clip is good, if you could put a handle on the darn thing, it's even better. And so I wrapped it in place and cinched it up with thread. And I said, well, geez, I'll put some UV glue on that and really make it nice and strong. And the first hackle that I folded, this happened. I said, holy crap, what's going on here? That used to be a bread clip, and I never did get the hackle folded. Well, let's slip over here and get this other one in the front of the materials area. I'll just throw this guy aside. And here's one that I'm going to take. I've got two here and a couple of things, and we'll just flip over here again to the vise so you can see this better. Let me just lay this clip down. All this is a hackle pliers. I'm using it as a handle. Now this used to be a clip off of a potato sack. Well, I looked at that and it was about twice as strong and heavy duty than the one off the bread. The bread was kind of flimsy, I thought. Well, I said, well, shoot, it was just weak. So I went ahead and made one out of the potato sack. And I put glue here, UV glue. I didn't here. You can see where it broke. I come to the conclusion, I'm a slow learner, I guess, because I had to do it twice. I come to the conclusion that UV and plastic don't like each other. So we'll just leave it at that, set that aside. But what I'm going to do though, is I still have a really good folding tool right there. And I'll just clip it like this. Or if I want to come from the side, I'll clip it like that, and I can stroke. But one of the things that you need if you're going to use potato sack or bread sack is you have to pinch this together, or this little slot where there's a slot down there just slips over the stem. But if you'll lash it into place, it stays there pretty good. And in fact, I've got one that I made out of a bread clip, no glue involved, and I'm going to fold a hackle with it. This one works just as good, but this one's a little cleaner and this one here is a little bit harder to hold, where this one I can move it around and hold it pretty well. So what we're going to do now is get over here to the materials area, and I'll just lay these down, lay this over here. That's trash, and that's learning. You guys need to know that it doesn't always work out, and we make the mistakes here at Fly Tying Friday, so you don't have to. Anyway, here is the folder. Let me get a feather out here. I got a couple of pheasant body feathers here, and I'll just slip over to the vise. I'm going to put this into the jaws. And now one of the things that I immediately come into a problem with is getting my cameras to actually allow me to show the folding process. Because if I reach in here to fold it, well, it looks like it's going to work okay from here. But one of the things that I found, it's best not to anchor this, because you can just move this around like that or like this. And in this case, I want to come in from the side here and fold this. And that folds it real nice. But now I want to come in from the other side. Normally I come in like that. Of course, guess what? The camera's in the way. Well, I'll just do it left-handed from this side. And I don't do very well left-handed there, so let me get that stroked into place. And that works pretty good. And it makes a fairly good folded hackle. Let's get back here to here, and it is a fairly good one. I folded that once today just to make sure it was going to go. So let's get one that's never been folded before.
Oh, you cheated.
Well, I had to see if it was going to work, but let's pull this out here, because I'll tell you the truth, I've got some surprises here for you yet. We'll put that in the vise and crimp her down. And I'm just going to stroke that along the stem there. You can feel it just laying those fibers back just the way you want them. And now I want to come in here like this, and my hand is going to be in the way, but I think I can switch this around like this so that I can go along that side and still not have my hand in the picture.
Yeah, that works.
And that folds that pretty good. So that works pretty good. Well, set that aside. We're done with that one. And we want to try the Matalone tool. Well, let's get another feather here.
It's not a Matalone. Somebody told me how to do that.
Okay, it was a tool brought to us by Matalone. It's not a Matalone tool. Is that a good correction there, Sam?
Yeah.
Good,
Sometimes
good.
sometimes people have called me a tool. I don't know what they mean. But.
Okay, well, anyway, here is a divider from an 18 compartment box that you get at Hobby Lobby or whatever. We have them all over the place here. We put flies in them and materials and all kinds of stuff. So let's just see how that works. Let's see if we can see that good. That does a really, really good job. So I folded one side of that feather. Now what I'm going to do though is I'm going to show you something else, and I'm going to set this aside, because here's something else I discovered. I could have kept the one that with the Sam tool, but instead I decided to take another divider from another box just so I'd have something different. And I'm going to fold the other side without a notch or anything. And that does an excellent job as well. So what did I learn from all of this? I have to be honest with you, all the tools in the world are great. And if you're in the business of selling tools, you can show a reason to have every one of them. But that bread clip worked real well. And the divider from the box worked really well. And if you've got a box, you've got a lot of dividers, you could pull one temporarily out to do that. But I also have to tell you, I have folded one heck of a lot of flies with the edge of my scissor blades. show you just using the edge of the scissors will work really well. You don't want to use these edges, the sharp edges, but use these edges right here. And you just get them in there and that will fold hackle just perfectly. And I think I can get in there without, but anyway, does a great job as well. Now, let me get a spotlight on Jim Ferguson. Okay,
Yeah.
Jim, you got a spotlight?
What I found out was that if you have an old pair of scissors and uh, you want to make sure you use it, this is the dull side of what used to be sharp. But Buzz Busick was referenced in one of Shuey's articles as being how he learned this, what's called the scissor fold, which is what you were just doing. When you attach your fly and you just go down the edge of it, and then you can reverse it and come down the other side. You just have to make sure that you're using the dull side, and that really folds it over. What you run into a problem with is if you push too hard, you'll peel fibers off, or
Yeah.
you can cut the fibers. But then when you wrap it on, you can just pull it back like that, and you can get those things to really fold back. And especially when you're doing the Atlantics, where you've got a larger hackle and a larger stem, then you can come down there like that after you've tied it off, and you can really get that hackle to flow back. So really, a lot of us have been wearing, if you just hook that around your fingers, you've got really a nice hackle holder right in your hand.
Jim, like you, I've been folding them with my scissors for years, and everybody knows that I keep my scissors in my hands all the time. So when I need to fold a hackle, I don't have to go looking for anything. They're right there.
You just, I was just wondering on those. I haven't tried that potato sack thing or the bread sack thing, but like you say, there's a little space that you need to close up, and I don't know if you can somehow melt something across there or not. But again, how many
I
tools?
guarantee it's not UV glue. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah.
That's it for this week, folks. Thanks so much for joining us. Maybe we'll see you next week. We maybe won't. We'll figure out after we work on some computers. But thanks for joining us tonight.